Hello, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I will be talking about the Six of Crows duology today. If you hear any noise in the back, that's just my brother playing Fallen Order. Please ignore it. Also, I am attempting to use my earbuds mic, um, to maybe get better audio quality, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, the first half will be a spoiler-free review, and the second half will be a summary review with spoilers. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. Why did I pick up this book? I heard so many good reviews about it, and I had to know what the hype was all about. It was the highest rated book on my Goodreads to read list, and I had some friends recommend it too, so I was curious. That said, I didn't know a single thing about it before I started reading. I had heard about the Shadow and Bone series and the Grishaverse, but I didn't know this was connected at first. I've also never seen the show and avoided all spoilers for it for the most part. I contemplated reading Shadow and Bone first, but then I heard that Six of Crows could still be understood without prior knowledge, although it definitely would be clearer with the added context. But I decided to just read this duology first, and I do intend to circle back and read Shadow and Bone eventually. The only spoilers I did pick up was when my Pinterest feed caught on that I was reading this and I got spoiled via fan art. But maybe that's on me. Um, well, actually, no. How is that my fault that it showed up in my Pinterest feed? I take no responsibility. I will say, though, it's impressive that the characters are distinct enough that you can tell who is who just based on their hands. If you know the picture I'm referring to. I'll probably have it later in this video, in the spoiler section. Alright, let's get into the spoiler free portion. Here's the premise according to Goodreads, or I think it's on the back of the book too. Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price, and no one knows that better than criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. My man. Sorry. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams. But he can't pull it off alone. And then we have our titular Six of Crows. A convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wraith, my favorite, a heartrender using her magic to survive the slums, and a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. Six dangerous outcasts, one impossible heist. Kaz's crew is the only thing that might stand between the world and destruction, if they don't kill each other first. One thing to know about me is that I love ensemble casts. I love having multiple characters to follow and to become invested in, so this seemed right up my alley. I almost said allergy. Anyway, let's start with the first book. On the slide, you'll see the notes I scribbled down while reading. First of all, I would like to say the writing style is fantastic. There's so many memorable lines, and the descriptions are incredibly vivid. It's beautiful without being overbearing or overly poetic. Perhaps I'm cocky, and sometimes I read a book and I'm like, yeah, I can write like that. But that's not the case with this book, let me be clear. Every intended emotion was elicited from me, from shock to horror to girly giggling. Some parts had me screaming, oh my gosh, and other parts had me squealing, oh my gosh. In terms of the whole heist plot, it feels almost secondary to the mountains of character driven drama, but I really don't care. The characters are fan-flippantastic, and I could read about them doing just about anything and I'd be happy. There's that classic all seems lost moment at the climax, of course, but I gladly ate it up. My favorite scene was that climbing scene with Kanej. It's kind of funny because I was on the Stairmaster at the gym when I was listening to that part, and it motivated me to keep going. Kanej is so dang cool. I also really love the scene where Kaz asks Inej to say the tension and weight is absolutely perfect. You'll hear me talk about Kaz and Inej a lot in this video. Get used to it. They're some of my favorite characters ever. And I will say, the beginning of Six of Crows is a tad bit confusing, and I think me not reading Shadow and Bone first partially had something to do with it, but I promise you it just keeps getting better if you continue to read on. My only semi major criticism that I can think of is that the characters could be older and they wouldn't have changed much. I picture them in like their early 20s anyway, and I don't think that makes that much of a difference. If anything, I think it would have made a little more sense why they're basically all masters of their crafts if they were just a tad older. Also, the sexualization of certain people is a little uncomfy, or a lot uncomfy if you know their age. At first, I had this rated just shy of 5 stars, but it was the kind of story that sat with me for a while, and these characters continued to live in my brain rent free, and I found myself wanting to read it all over again just to pick up more details the second time around. And it's also the kind of book that I wanted to buy a physical copy of. Keep in mind, I only listened to it as an audiobook, but I wanted a physical copy just so I could reread my favorite parts over and over again. And taking all that in mind, I'm just thinking, what more can you ask for a book? So, oop, 5 stars and a 10 out of 10. It deserves nothing less. Alright, I was about to put the premise of Crooked Kingdom on here, but it spoils the ending of Six of Crows, so I opted not to. Although, if you know it's a duology, you can kind of assume some things. But anyway, this one was just as enjoyable as the first, even though I think the plot is a little less streamlined. But again, I love the characters, so I don't really care. Here's a vague list of my favorite scenes from the book. I'm not sure how much to say without spoiling too much. The broken lead scene had me on the edge of my seat. The Kanej scene had me squealing. The Jasper scene had me laughing. But oh, the violin scene. I loved the scene, past tense. I even went on to my brother and roommate about how good it was. And then something happens retroactively that retroactively changes how that scene can be seen, and it honestly ruined it for me. I was so freaking disappointed. I can't even describe it to you. I'll talk about it more in the spoiler section, but mm, it made me mad. Again, I love Verdugo's fighting style, and I made notes about some descriptions that particularly stood out. And again, Kaz is freaking insane and terrifying, but that's what I'm here for. It's still a 5 stars and a 10 out of 10, and I would reread it all over again. That rhymes. But again, that violence scene threatens to drop at just a tenth of a point, possibly. I think I still prefer Six of Crows just slightly more because the plot is a little more interesting, but Crooked Kingdom has a lot of my favorite scenes, so I think it kind of evens out in that way. They honestly work as just one long story. Okay, I want to briefly talk about the characters because they really are the highlight of this duology. I don't know how much I can say without spoiling too much, but here we go. If you want to go in absolutely blind like I did, then feel free to stop here. One of my favorite things about these characters is how nuanced and multifaceted they are. At first glance, you might think you can classify them into stereotypes you often see in ensemble casts. Oh, Kaz is the tough leader, and Edge is the girl, Nina is the flirty, sexy one, and Pius is the big, strong one. Jasper is the funny one and the friend, Warlen is the smart one and the trademark kid. But there's so much more to them than just that. Each character has distinct traits, different belief systems, varying strengths and weaknesses, and interesting backstories. They feel and act like real people, and that's why they work so well. To start off, when I first met Kaz, I was like, oh geez, not another brooding bad boy. But there's a good reason for the why he's the way he is. His backstory is just, it's on another level of tragic. Okay, here's an important distinction I need to make that I think a lot of people fail to understand. Morally speaking, Kaz is a bad person but he is a fantastic character. He is consistent and understandable in his motivations and actions. He's smart, calculating, terrifying, and awesome to see in action. He's definitely someone you would always want to be on your side. That being said, he's not a good person and never claims to be. There are moments where Inej cautions him because he threatens to take things too far, even. Speaking of, Inej is an example of a good person and a good character. She's my personal favorite in The Crows, and honestly one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. Yeah, she's exactly the kind of strong female character that I like to see. She's tough and fierce, but she still gets hurt. She cares deeply about the people around her, sticks to her faith even through the worst of times, and remains hopeful. As I mentioned before, the scene where she climbs the incinerator shaft is peak and one of my favorite scenes in the entire duology. Or ever. As some of you may or may not know, these books include three potential couples among the six characters. Kaz and Inej, or Kanej, are my personal favorite. They have such a unique dynamic, and it's obvious that they care for each other, but they show it in ways other than just saying it or kissing or all that. If anything, Kaz says something entirely unromantic, if you know, you know. But they have cute and meaningful moments to it, and that I live on. I also adore the detail when Nina says Kaz's heartbeat changes whenever he sees an edge. I'm so down bad for them, and they're honestly one of my favorite fictional couples of all time. You'll be hearing a lot of them throughout this whole review because they're my new obsession and I love them. Anyway, moving on. I have a little less to say about the next few without spoiling too much, so let's go. Jesper is funny and a lovable guy and totally gives off sibling energy. His dynamic with Kaz is fun and it definitely has its ups and downs. He's not free from his own struggles, but can be counted on to pull through. I wish he had a little more to do in the first book, especially, but he definitely gets his moments to shine. I always picture Wylan as a kid, even though he's only like a year younger than most of the other crows, but I think that really shows the difference about how some are forced to grow up faster than others. That being said, Wylan's life is by no means easy, like all these characters. I really like how his core traits remain the same, but he still matures and grows more confident and capable as the story progresses. I still have a bone to pick with that one scene, but again, more on that later. Nina, oh, she was immediately one of my favorite characters from the beginning. I love her wit and sass and confidence, and how she gets under Kaz and Matthias' skin. She's strong, but in a way that's distinctly different from Inej, and I love the bond the two girls share and how they look out for one another. Her dynamic with Matthias is fantastic and plays the enemies to lover trope so well. Finally, Matthias. The same way I picture Wylan as a kid, I picture Matthias as at least a couple years older than the rest of the crows, which he isn't as far as I know. I found myself quite invested in his internal conflict and how he has to outgrow his old prejudices. I kind of wish he had more of a connection with the other crows other than with Nina and his very tense relationship with Kaz, but I think it's fine either way. Alright, now it's time for the spoiler review summary of this duology. I decided on a pretty, somewhat detailed summary for these books, and I'm still deciding whether or not to keep this up, because it took quite a long time. Please, if you have any interest in these books, I strongly suggest you read them without spoilers because it is worth it. But if you've already read them or just want to hear me ramble, then proceed. I contemplated what to put on the slides for a while, but then I finally decided on just photos. If they seem random, I assure you, they're not. Mostly. Okay. The story begins with a guard named Juice who's crushing on a Grisha named Anya. Grisha are these people with magical powers who work as indentured servants. While reading this, I always wondered, if the Grisha are the ones with the power, why are they the ones subjugated? Maybe the other books explain it? Anyway, Anya and Juice work for the councilman Hode. Hode? Hood? Hode? I might be pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, Hood has Anya use her healing powers on this young boy. They then give her a drug and have her heal him again. They threaten to cut off the boy's thumb to test the extent of her powers, but then Anya, fueled by this new drug, manages to mind control everyone in the room and orders Hode to pick up the knife that was meant for the boy. And then that's how the first chapter ends. We then jump to 3 out of our titular 4 crows. Kaz and Nej and Jesper are members of the Dregs, one of the criminal gangs in Ketterdam. They're accompanied by a big brute named Big Bollinger, and they have a meeting with the Black Tips, a rival gang. Things seemingly turn sour when one of them, Giels, pulls a gun at Kaz, but Kaz shows that he's in total control of the situation. This is a trend we will see many a time. Kaz has been blackmailing one of the Black Tips members, Hulse. Kaz knows Big Bollinger is a traitor to the Dregs, and then he threatens to have Gil's girlfriend killed if anything were to happen to him. Hulse shoots Big Bollinger, Kaz breaks Gil's wrists, and so yeah, from the get-go, you already know what kind of character Kaz is. In the next chapter, Kaz is ambushed and abducted. He's brought before a merchant named Van Eck. Sorry with these pronunciations. So, remember that drug that made Anya go beast mode in the first chapter? Well, that's called Jerdapiram, and it was developed by someone named Bo Yolbayur, who's being currently held at the Ice Court, a Fjerdan fortress. Fennec wants Kaz to undertake the mission, and Kaz agrees to do so for 30 million Kruger. By the way, the Jerdapiram makes people do enhances the power of the Grisha to do different things. I found it a little funny because there are certain types of Grisha who have different kinds of powers, and Jerda affects them in different ways. But so it helped make some be able to go through walls, some be able to mind control like Anya, and then for certain ones, it allows them to turn objects into gold, which I thought was the lamest out of all of them. But maybe okay, who wouldn't want that if you could? I guess. In the next chapter, oh shoot, yeah, in the next chapter, Inej spies on Cass talking to Bear Haskell, the leader of the Dregs, about their proposed job. Later in his room, Cass tells her very little, but offers her 4 million Kruger to join his crew. And this is the infamous scene where he takes off his shirt and starts flashing himself in front of her. That was an OMG moment. By the way, he has a crow and cup tattoo like most of the Dregs do, and then he has an R on his bicep, which it will be explained later. Incoming baddie. Kaz goes to recruit Nina Zenik, a heart-render Grisha who's also part of the Dregs. They also agreed to break out Matthias Halvar of Fjerdan from the prison called Hellgate. Don't worry, who he is and why he's there will be revealed later. Kaz and Nej and Nina go to Hellgate, see Matthias fight wolves in the ring, and they pull a little switcheroo and by having Nina use her powers to make someone else look like Matthias. Matthias tries to strangle Nina when he recognizes her and tries to fight the others, but they manage to get him out of Hellgate. Cass thinks he'll be useful since he's a Fjerdan and knows the Ice Court and offers him a pardon papers for his crimes if he helps. Matthias agrees, but he still plans to kill Nina for getting him in jail in the first place. What a great start. Finally, the sixth and final member of the crew is added, Wyland, the son of Van Eck, who Kaz is using as insurance that they get paid in the end. Wyland is a demolition expert, air quotes here, but he has been to the Ice Court and helps the crows draw a map. Matthias pulls a noob move and tries to jump Kaz for the papers, and Kaz beats him up. If you take one thing away from this series, it's to never cross Kaz because he'll always be 10 steps ahead, or more. Next up, we have the first of the recurring phenomenon of Kaz surprises his own crew with his surprise plan. The Net heads for the boat that they're supposed to leave on, but it explodes and they're attacked by some people. Kaz says that ship was an intentional diversion and directs them to the actual ship. In the skirmish, Inez gets injured and Kaz carries her to safety. This is the infamous scene where Kaz says he protects his investments when saving Inez. How entirely unromantic and yet fitting. It's also a great scene. Love the banter between them. Kaz interrogates one of the attackers and rips out his eyeball, and the man reveals they were sent by Pekka Rollins. This is someone Kaz notably hates. Put a pin in that, it will be revisited later and multiple times. This eyeball scene was definitely one of those oh my gosh moments. I was not expecting that, but if you continue reading the series, you kind of have to get used to the Kaz antics, and then you come to maybe enjoy them if you're someone like me. Next, we have a little flashback, a reveal moment with Nina and Matthias. Matthias is a Druzgel. Why did I say it like that? Tasked with the eradication of the Grisha. Nina was captured and transported on his ship. In the present, Nina tells Matthias that she could have left Kaladin, but she regretted her lie and couldn't leave him in Hellgate. Next is a conversation with Nina and Inej, as Inej is recovering from the attack. Nina notices Inej doesn't have a crow and cup tattoo that the rest of the dregs have, and Inej explains that Kaz told her that she didn't have to get it. You see, Inej was kidnapped and trafficked as a child, and this was Kaz's way of showing her that she would not be owned again despite her current indenture. It's in the details, man. Also, I love Nina and Nej's friendship, especially when Inej tells Nina about how Kaz called her an investment. It's moments like these between characters that really made me fall in love with them and their dynamics. Next is a conversation with Kaz and Inej, where Kaz asks her if she can climb a 6-story incinerator shaft in order for their escape from the Ice Court to work. He knows she can, of course, so this is more of an excuse to talk with her. Hee hee. Ned asks why Kaz hates Pekka Rollins, and Kaz confides in her that Pekka was the cause of his brother Jordy's death by tricking them into getting their inheritance. However, Kaz eventually closes up and refuses to say more. I love moments like these in their relationship because it shows how Kaz wants to reach out and how Inej is there for him, and yet he holds back. That ache is tangible and so dang good. I can't describe it well enough to do it justice, but I love it so much. Kaz kind of vaguely explains his plan to the rest of the crew, but I'm going to be honest, I was just like, yeah, okay, sure. You probably know the best for the most of this because I didn't really have much other reason not to believe Kaz would know the best. I feel like a lot of readers would agree that a lot of us can't describe the plan to you very well. Anyway, flashback to Nina and Matthias again. I'm telling this in order these details are revealed in the book, but now I'm wondering if I should have kept all the details together. Anyway, I'm too far in now. That ship they were on together years ago capsized, and Nina saved Matthias's life, despite the fact that he was one of the Jews killed meant to kill her. As they travel together, Matthias saves Nina's life at some point as well, and a little something something sparks between them. However, we find out here that Nina falsely accused Matthias of being a slaver, and that's how he ended up in Hellgate. Back in the present, our crew gets attacked. Hold up on that picture. Back in the present, our crew gets attacked by a group of Grisha on the Jerda Perem drug. They survive, and Nina and Matthias make an agreement that Bo Yobayor cannot leave the ice court alive. Ha ha ha. The crew sneaks aboard the prisoner wagon as their ticket into the ice court. It's a cramped space, and Kaz faints while in there. Why does tough as nails Kaz faint? Well, now we get into his backstory. And let me tell you, there's tragic backstories, and there's whatever the heck happened to him. So recall how Kaz and his brother Jordy got tricked out of their inheritance by Pekka Rollins. While living on the streets, they both got sick with firepox. Jordy died, but they were both loaded onto the Reaper's barge to be burned. Kaz, who's still alive, used Jordy's bloated body as a raft to swim back to shore. I don't think the exact explanation of Kaz's aversion to touch is explicitly stated in this book, but you can kind of understand why based on this backstory. I'm so sorry for that picture, but it's a little funny. At the ice court, Kaz's lockpicking tours are confiscated and he beats someone else up in jail. As expected. Honestly, despite his cane, he never seems to fail to beat someone up at any possible moment, so go figure. Anyway, Jesper reveals himself to also be a Grisha, specifically a fabricator, so he can manipulate matter. He uses the metal from the bars to fashion lockpicking tools for Kaz. I thought this was a really neat reveal, and I was like, yo, Jesper is even cooler than I thought. Oop, now for the best scene. I'm having too much fun with these pictures, guys. Okay. The incinerator shaft has been recently lit, so it's burning hot, but Inej undertakes the climb anyway. Her shoes start to melt, and she starts to despair, but she thinks to herself that she can pull this off. She'll use this payment money to buy herself a ship and hunt down the slavers like the ones who kidnapped her, and that motivates her to keep going. I adore the scene so much, and I really, really, really fell in love with Inej here even more, as if I wasn't already in love with her. Anyway. Well, Kaz is off being a badass. Kaz is off being a Kaz. He finds Pekka Rollins in the cell and approaches ominously. Returns to the others with his shirt covered in blood. Dun dun dun. The gang realizes, somewhere along the line, I don't exactly remember, that Bo Yobayor isn't actually in the prison. Womp womp. So Kaz has to hatch a new plan. They assume Yobayor is at a white island where a party's being thrown, and Inej and Nina try to disguise themselves as menagerie girls, the brothel where Inej was previously enslaved. Nina makes it in, but Inej gets detained. What I appreciate about this scene is that it shows the different strengths of the two girls. Nina's smooth and guileful and can talk her way out of situations easier than Inej, and this scene really showcased that perfectly. Anyway, now we flip-flop between characters and their antics. Matthias is with the Kaz and has the opportunity to shoot him at one point, and though he's tempted to, Kaz, of course, is prepared for this with his own gun and just wants to test Matthias' loyalty. Is anyone surprised? Wylan and Jesper flirt a lot, and me being a dummy didn't realize that their banter was meant to be flirtatious until Wylan asked Jesper if he only likes girls, to which Jesper says no. To which I went, oh! Yeah, I may be a little dense because I didn't pick any of that up. In the holding area, Inej is recognized by Tante Helene, the Madame of the Menagerie. Helene tells the guards that Inej is part of the dregs, and Kaz must be somewhere close. Oh. Nina flirts her way around looking for Bo Yulbayur's location, but then she's trapped and caught by a Druskal leader named Brum, who Matthias used to look up to. There's a bit of a fake out where it seems Matthias has betrayed them, but then he knocks Brum out and frees Nina after learning about the Druskal's plans to experiment on the Grisha with Jerda Parem. Sorry guys, I'm having trouble talking today. Matthias and Nina find out that not Bo Yulbayur, but his son Kuwei is being held there. Kuwei reveals that his father is dead and he's being forced to try to recreate his father's formula. Kuwei says Bo Yulbayur made Jerda Param by accident in an attempt to create something meant to hide Grisha powers instead of enhance it. You see, Kuwei is also a Grisha, one with fire powers. He tortures the lab and escapes with Nina and Matthias. They meet up with Kaz, who has blown up a sacred ash tree. Typical Kaz, and they dive down into the river below to escape. As Kaz nearly drowns, who does he think of? Who does he think of? Jordy. You thought Inej, right? Well, yes, he does think about Inej too, of course. And here's the line that I mentioned earlier. She laughed, and if he could have bottled that sound and gotten drunk on it every night, he would have, and it terrified him. So dang good. Anyway, Jesper and Wyland rescue Inej, and they commandeer a big tank and drive it out of the ice cord. They pick up the others along the way, and they're nearly to the ship when they see an army of Grisha and Jerda Param blocking their way. We have an all seems lost moment, and Nina decides to take a dose of Jerda Param to spike her own powers. Uh-oh. Nina controls the army and turns them against the Druskel with her new powers. My new powers? She and every time I say the words new powers, I think of Anakin Skywalker. Only my new powers could do that. Side tangent, sorry. Anyway, Nina and Matthias get shot, but Nina heals them instantly, and thanks to her, the crew manages to escape. Incoming another one of my favorite scenes, Nina tells Inej how Kaz's heartbeat changes whenever he looks at her. And we have a freaking good scene with Kaz and Inej. If you couldn't tell, I have a bit, more than a bit, of an obsession, where Inej tells Kaz of her plans to hunt down slavers. Kaz asks her to stay in Ketterdam with him, but she can tell his walls are stir up. There's yet another memorable line where she tells him, I will have you without armor, Kazbrecker, or I will not have you at all. This is exactly the kind of relationship that doesn't need to be rushed and isn't rushed, and I love it. There's also a sweet scene with Nina and Matthias where Nina is undergoing Jerda Param withdrawal symptoms, and Matthias comforts her. Oh, how far they've come from the beginning of this novel. Now final showdown and twist. It's a little complicated, so I'll try to explain it as best as I can. The Crow crew meets with Van Eck to exchange Kuwei for their pyramid. Van Eck's men draw guns on them, and it turns out Van Eck didn't just want to stop Bo Yulbayur and the production of Jerda Param. He wanted to use Jerda Param to his advantage and take over the world, or something like that. Cass says that he has Wyland, Van Eck's son, if you recall. Van Eck reveals that he doesn't care about Wyland because Wyland can't read or write. Van Eck's men blow up the ship that Wyland is supposedly on. Jesper has a freak-out panic because he thinks Wyland is dead, but aha, you guessed it. Kaz is multiple steps ahead once again. And once again, he surprises his own teammate with his plan. Nina had used her Grisha powers to tailor Wyland to look like Kuwei, so Wyland wasn't actually on the ship that blew up. Van Eck tells his men to kill everyone but Kaz. Kaz accidentally looks at Inej. Van Eck identifies her as Kaz's weakness and escapes with her and the money. Yet another memorable line incoming. Kaz goes, I'm going to get my money, and I'm going to get my girl. You know, the scene made me wonder if this is the first time Kaz showed his weakness for Inej, if you want to call it that, or if this was just the first time someone spotted it. Because I assume he's been in plenty of life-threatening situations before. So has no one else noticed that he has a soft spot for his wraith? I don't know. Anyway, the book ends with a reveal that Kaz left Pekka Rollins alive and didn't actually kill him back in the Ice Court. And that's Six of Crows. I totally did not expect the cliffhanger, but that leads us right into Crooked Kingdom. And let me just say, I didn't need a cliffhanger to want to read more about these characters because, again, I love them so darn much. Okay, if Six of Crows was hard to summarize, Crooked Kingdom is definitely no easier, but I'll try my best. Crooked Kingdom begins with Vetvanko, a member of the Merchant Council, getting abducted. I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't remember this part much at all, so let's get back to the characters we actually care about. The Five of Crows, are at a gambling house thing thang to get info about where Inej is. Nina is struggling with her withdrawal symptoms, Jesper is struggling with his gambling, Rylan is struggling with his inability to read, Matthias is being irrelevant, just kidding, and Kaz is being Kaz. He threatens a kid to kill her parents and her dogs, and Wylan is reasonably appalled, and so am I. A little update on the state of the world. People from all countries are out looking for Kuei. Kuei wants to flee Ketterdam and make a cure for Jorda Parem, but Kaz threatens to kill him if he leaves. I realize that in summary form, Kaz seems like the worst person ever, and well, he kinda is, but I promise there's a lot more than him than just brutality and brooding. Anyway, remember how they pulled off the little switcheroo to get Matthias out of Hellgate? Well, the person Nina tailored to look like Matthias was killed by Drewskill. So this means two things. Matthias's former brothers in arms wanted him dead, and two, they think they succeeded in killing him. My death has been greatly exaggerated. Oh, also, Jesper's father Confei is in Ketterdam. Back to my girl Inej and another one of my favorite scenes. Can you see a trend with all my favorite scenes? Inej tries to escape, but she's caught by Van Eck, and who threatens to have her legs broken. This scene is so freaking tense. Inej tells them the cats wouldn't trade for her if they break her, and this convinces them to spare her. However, Inej thinks about the possible truth of her statement and wonders if Kaz would actually come for her. Meanwhile, um, Jesper and Wyland rescue Colin from attackers, but they don't tell him the truth of the situation they're in. Now we have Kaz once again being 2 steps ahead. Inej tries telling Van Eck about Kaz's abandoned hideouts, to which he responds that he knows that she's stalling and that Kaz is on his way. Van Eck then receives a message that Kaz has kidnapped Van Eck's pregnant wife Alice and proposes a prisoner exchange. Inej headbutts Van Eck and breaks his nose, just for good measure. She's the freaking best. Alice is a bad singer and annoys the crows, but she's otherwise docile. Nina and Matthias dress up in Mr. Crimson, which is a traditional Ketterdam character costumes, and create a diversion while Kaz makes the trade. A part of the scene that sticks in my brain is when Kaz throws Inej's knife or knives up in the air and trusts her to catch it as he undoes the shackles at her ankles. What a power couple, I tell you. Meanwhile, Wyland makes things go kaboom, and other things also go kaboom, and the gang is unexpectedly attacked by a group of winged shoe warriors, aka the place where Kuei is from, and the ones that carried off that dude in the first chapter. They seem to be hunting Grisha and the crew, but the Crow crew, successfully escapes them. Now we have another of Kaz explains his plan while we nod along and pretend to know what he's talking about. This time it's a plan to bring down Van Eck. Kaz has bought sugar stocks with the money he got from selling other company shares to Pekka Rollins. They will release a bunch of special weevils engineered by Wyland and Kuei to attack Van Eck's sugar and then blame him for it, so he loses money and his reputation tanks. And this plan requires Inej to scale the silos and walk across wires to drop in the weevils, and she's still weak from her imprisonment, but they need to do it soon. It seems that a lot of Kaz's plans hinge on Inej in some way, but hey, that just further shows you their bond. Also, this whole story's plot seems really dumb when I explain it like this, but I promise you it's a lot more interesting when you actually read the words. But yeah, I get I'm not exactly giving it the best pitch. Also, for some reason, when I'm rereading the summary, there's things I straight up do not remember, but that could be just because I read these a couple of months ago, and my memory retention sucks. Anyway, we now have a sweet Kaj and Inej scene. By that I mean they go and spy on Van Eck. Ah yes, the perfect date. And Ned dupes Cass into her going in alone, which is fantastic. It's also here where she tells him that Van Eyck threatened to break her legs, and she asks him if he would still come for her if she was no longer useful to him. To which he responds with just this gem. I would have come for you, and if I couldn't walk, I'd crawl to you. And no matter how broken we were, we'd fight our way out together, knives drawn, pistols blazing, because that's what we do. We never stop fighting. What I love is that I can basically quote this verbatim without having to look it up. So many gems of quotes in these books. Anyway, apparently this is a time for unusual dates because Nina and Matthias go out to Little Ravka, a section of Katadan. If I haven't mentioned it before, Nina is originally from Ravka, so this makes her a little homesick. She and Matthias go to a tavern where they end up surrounded by other Grisha. They try to make an escape but are pinned to the ceiling by Zoya Nasilensky, Nina's old mentor, who I hear is important in other books, but I don't really know who she is. Anyway, now we're on date number 3. Wyland and Jesper are supposedly going to find a mineral that will be used to make the weevil, but it's actually really common and Wyland just wants to go visit his mother's grave. It is now when we finally get a bit more of Wyland's backstory. His father supposedly sent him off to music school, but Wyland, noticing that Alice was pregnant, put two and two together and managed to survive an attempt made on his life. You see, here we have a nice little parallel between Kaz and Wyland, who both crawled out of the harbor after some traumatic event, but are and become two very different people. Anyway, plot twist, Wyland's mom is, in fact, not dead, and rather in an asylum. The scene is honestly so heartbreaking when Wyland sees the state his mother is in. He sees that she's painted many pictures of him, and he plays the flute for her. The scene is super, super, duper heartbreaking, and I just want to give Wyland a hug. Side note, Wyland is very much my type of guy, so I don't know what that says about me. Back to Nina and Matthias. I'm gonna be honest with you. I got rather lost in the whole meeting with the Ravkin Grisha part, but Nina and Matthias finally did kiss after much tease and build up, so there's that. Also, Nina gains her appetite back. Yes! Ever since her withdrawal, which is a hell yeah moment. But also, they see a wanted poster for Matthias, dead or alive. I'm sure you can see where this is going. There's also wanted posters for Kaz and Wyland, though he's not the only one. So Matthias is not the only one. We finally get a glimpse of Jasper's backstory and how his mother helped him with his Grisha powers, but sadly died while saving a young girl. Allegedly, this girl she saved is someone important in another book, but again, I wouldn't know until I actually read those. Anyway, dates are over and now we're putting Kaz's plan into action. And that's just walking the wire tightrope like she used to during her days as an acrobat and dropping the weevils in the silos. Literally every scene with Inej is automatically awesome for me, but that's my fangirl showing. But anyway, things of course can't go perfectly and smoothly, and someone pushes her into the silo. Dun dun dun. Meanwhile, Cass and Wylan are engaging in some healthy thievery at Van Eyck's, taking money and the signet ring, which they plan to use to help Grisha refugees out of the city. On their way out, they get surrounded by Pekka Rollins and the Dime Lions gang, which is a cool name, by the way. I don't know why I like it so much. Matthias, Jesper, and Koi also get attacked by Dime Lions, but they escape under cover of explosives, which seems to be a trend with them. Silent note, I don't know if it's just me, but I constantly forget that Koi exists. I don't know. Sometimes he just seems like a plot device rather than a character, and I never really cared for him the way I did with everyone else. But that just might be a me thing, though. Anyway, Inej is attacked by an assassin named Onyasha, who cuts the wire, but Nina uses her powers to animate corpses that hold out a net and save Inej from the fall. The sight of the corpses get the Dime Lions attacking them to run away, and also Onyasha flees, and Nina and Inej regroup with the other. The gang chills in Colm Fahey's hotel room to plot their next course of action. They feel surrounded at all sides, and Cass suggests turning himself in to Van Eyck. Cass and Jesper get into a fight, which admittedly is a little funny to me, and Cass accidentally calls Jesper by his brother Jordy's name. Colm breaks up the fight, and the gang decides instead to have Kue put himself up for sale in an auction. This has a lot to do with the rules of how indentures work in Ketterdam, by the way. I'm not sure if this has any historical basis or if it's completely made up, but if you have any information on this, please let me know. Anyway, next we have some Jesper drama, which, by the way, I'm describing some parts more details than others. It's because I don't remember some parts as well, and I don't own a physical copy of the book to refer to. So if you want a more detailed summary, find another video, read Spark Notes or something, or better, just read the dang book. But anyway, we have a gold scene where Jesper accidentally kisses Kuei instead of Wylan because, if you recall, Wylan is still tailored to look like Kuei. I admittedly was cackling a little when I reached this part, and in classic dramatic fashion, Wylan sees this happen and storms off. Kuei is pretty pleased with himself. This is honestly the one memorable thing I remember him doing. I'm sorry, if you're a Kuei fan, I apologize for the slander, but he's just not my favorite. Anyway, how many times am I gonna say anyway in this video? Probably every time I get off topic, like right now. Anyway, we're at the Kanej scene, where they're in the bathroom and he's helping change the bandages on their wounds. As you recall, Kaz doesn't like skin to skin contact because it reminds him of the dead bodies on the Reaper's barge, and Jordy. And Ned struggles with it too because of her time in the menagerie. This just makes the dynamic and careful connection so freaking good, and once again, you can really feel the longing and the ache. I also appreciate their talk about noticing tells in people. Kaz advises Inej to look for Danash's tells when she faces her again. According to Kaz, Inej's tell is that she squares her shoulders before she moves. Kaz's most obvious tell is his cane, but that serves as a distraction from everything else. Dang it, they're such an interesting characters alone and together, and that's why I love them so much. Kaz then goes on to assert his dominance over Para Haskell, who, if you remember, is the leader of the Dregs, and Kaz claims leadership of the Dregs when he reveals Haskell is working with Van Eck and the Dime Lions. He gets beat up and beats people up, and Kaz things. Honestly, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The plot is secondary to the character drama in these books, but I don't really care. You know what I also don't care much about? Calm passing as a merchant and merchant meetings. See, you'd think I'd hate these books if I tell you the main plot isn't super duper uber compelling, but no, the characters 100% make the story what it is. I will say though, this book definitely seems to hinge on the bigger picture within the bigger series than the last book, which is probably why I got pretty lost at places where I didn't see the significance of certain details. But hey, that's what rereads are for. And also reading the entire series like I'm supposed to. Oh yeah, Rylan gets his face tailored back to normal, and he and Jesper finally kiss. Yippee, the couples are thriving. But okay, here's a scene that sorta, really infuriates me. There's this moment and then the reveal. I'll explain it all now because it makes it easier. Rylan is kidnapped by the Dime Lions and asked about Cass's plans. As he's getting beat up, he tries to draw the strengths of his newfound family, but the chapter ends with something along the lines of that he was Wylan Van Eck and he told them everything. And you see, I loved this scene when I first heard it. Wylan is not one of the toughened criminals like the other crows, so he can and shouldn't be expected to be like them. As sad as it was, I thought the scene was powerfully tragic and in no way a disservice to Wylan's character. Well, it's revealed later that this was all part of the plan, and Kaz once again being 10 steps ahead. See, in most cases, I've excused this, but in this specific case, I just think it could have been more interesting if this had not gone according to plan and they still succeeded anyway. But maybe that's just me. During the auction, people are betting. What's the word? Wagering, raising. What do you do in auctions? Anyway, on their whatever. They're betting on Kuei with a bunch of Grisha called the Council of the Tides because they have water powers. Duh. Slide in and declare the auction to be a big hoax. People argue, and Kaz and crew manage to shift blame over to Van Eck and Rollins. Nina uses her powers to make people look like they have the Queen's Lady Plague, and this causes mass chaos. Meanwhile, Inej encounters Dunyasha again and they fight while Jesper has a boss fight of his own. Then Jesper uses his Grisha powers to send a bullet at Kuei, and Kaz jabs Kuei with a syringe to knock him out and fake his death. I was gonna bash on Kuei for being a mere plot device again, but you get the idea. Now we have a scene with Pekka Rollins and Kaz, where Kaz says that he's buried Pekka's son alive and won't reveal the location until Pekka says Jordy's name. Pekka struggles to remember, and he's left begging on his knees before Kaz in front of all his men. Kaz eventually relents and tells Pekka where his child is, and Pekka runs off. Kaz tells Inej later, who Inej was freaking out in the background the whole time of that scene. Well, Kaz tells her that he was lying the whole time and didn't even know Pekka had a son. Well, what a gamble. Honestly, this scene is where Kaz really seemed the most terrifying to me, not all the times he's fighting, but in this scene. When he talks about how Pekka can imagine his son dying in 100 different ways, and that's worse than actually killing his son, I was like, whoa. Because it's true. And anyway, Kaz and Inej hold hands, hee hee yay. You've heard enough of me fangirling, I know you're sick of it. Okay, Hina and Matthias get Kawhi onto a boat where Zoya revives him. Unfortunately, Matthias is confronted by a young boy, Druskel, who accuses him of being a traitor. Matthias tries to reason with him, but the boy shoots him and he dies in Nina's arms. See, here's the thing. This was the one major moment that was spoiled for me via fan art on Pinterest, the specific fan art you see on the screen. But even so, I see why he had to be the character to die. The fact that it was a young Druska who did it, a representation of his old self, perhaps, is also just tragically poetic. Speaking of tragically poetic, chapter 40 is short and beautiful. I don't cry when I read, but this one had me making all the faces. Okay, the book is wrapping up now and my voice is tired, so we're almost done. Wyland gets his rightful inheritance after some strings are pulled and the crew finally gets their money. Pekka, Van Eck, and Per Haskell have all been driven out and Kaz is living his best life. We have our final Kanej scene where Kaz surprises Inej by buying her a warship that she wanted to go hunt slavers with. He also reunites her with her parents, who she hasn't seen in years. They hold hands without his gloves, and yeah, you get it. It's very cute, and they're one of my favorite fictional couples I've ever read about, and this left me longing for more. Finally, we have one last Inej being the best scene, where she threatens Pekka Rollins and tells him to never again return to Ketterdam. Pekka checks in on his son and sees him holding a crow toy instead of a lion, and rightfully decides to book it. And yeah, that's my kind of horrible summary and review of this duology. The script was 20 pages long and took a super long time to write up, so if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Please consider liking and subscribing and leaving comments so I can continue growing this channel. But that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed and I'll catch you all next time. Bye!